Now, I think we've a really interesting conversation for you. I'm delighted to welcome to the show Aoife Hall. Aoife, great to have you on.
Thank you.
So, you spoke with a colleague of ours, Arthur O'D, on the Off the Ball website last year. It's a fantastic interview. People should still Google your name and it will come up and have a read. In effect, I suppose it encompassed two subjects we don't talk about on the show all that often. One, bowling,
Yeah.
and two, endometriosis, which we certainly haven't talked about much in the show, but it is endometriosis month. So these are not two subjects that we've talked about, like I said, all that often. Could we start with bowling, if that's
Yeah,
okay?
that's no problem.
So here's my base level knowledge. A few birthday parties as a kid,
Mm,
Kingpin, the Big
yeah,
Lebowski, and I think
yeah.
Fred Flintstone kind of liked to bowl as well. And that's kind of
And
as
Homer
much as I have to
Simpson.
offer here.
Yes, chuck him in there as well.
Yeah, but geez, I mean, I think we've all had a go at it, so we can all appreciate how difficult it is. You are very, very, very good at this. From the age of 12, you were on Team Ireland. The age of 14, US schools were interested. At 17, you were the youngest Irish female bowler to score a perfect game. You've been a national champion. You've partaken in World Cups, so you know what you're doing. How did you get into this? Why bowling?
Um, it came from my parents, basically. When my parents started dating, my dad was the one who liked to go out for dinner or go to the pub or that kind of stuff, where my mum was more into the non-alcoholic end of the date. And she brought him bowling. And from that, my dad really got into it, and so did my uncle. And then my brother and I came along, and we were kind of introduced to it and started in a junior club, which was Kit Kat Alley Cats in Exile Bowl, which became Harmerstown Superdome.
Oh yeah.
And from there, it kind of flew. I was, I think, 5 or 6 when I was first in bowling alley, and they kind of wait for you to be 6 back then. Now they're younger, but back then it was kind of the age of 6 where you start throwing a ball, and kind of got hooked from there. It also played into I've like great hand-eye coordination. I played an awful lot of sports as a kid, and hand-eye coordination, balance, and all that kind of became my thing. And bowling kind of, that's what you need for it. You know, it's physics, it's hand-eye coordination, it's accuracy, it's all of that. So yeah, I kind of got the bug. Won my first competition at 10, won all of the titles in the bantams at 12 through Ireland. Went to my first Triple Crown at 12. And from there, I built a bowling family around the world. I have friends that I've known from Scotland and England and Jersey and that since I was 12. I have friends from Australia, America, Shanghai, Singapore, everywhere in the world, from bowling and from having that same passion and that same drive that I have. They're just living it up in a different country and living it up better in a different country. Bowling is quite behind the rest of Europe and the world when it comes to bowling. We're probably one of the only few countries left that were not sponsored or funded. Yeah, so that's kind of where my passion came from, was just bowling isn't just a bowling sport, it's a bowling family, and it's generations of families. My friend's father was bowled for Team Ireland. He then played for Team Ireland, and his children are now playing for Team Ireland. So it's that lovely generational thing that happens in a sport, I suppose, that I love, and
Yeah.
will do anything to keep alive and keep going. Yeah. So talking about bowling on off the ball is a tick off the list of helping my sport. Yeah.
Now that you mention it, so bowling not being funded, is bowling an Olympic sport? I'm asking
It's
ignorantly here.
not in the Olympics yet. We
Oh,
have tried previously and failed. And the PBA, which is the pro bowling format, which is all through Europe and America, it's mostly in America, they've been trying. And so a lot of our governing bodies, we've 4 bowling governing bodies, and they are trying to amalgamate the formats of competitions to suit the proposals they've put forward for the Olympics. Amazingly enough, bowling is one of the most participated sports in the world, but for some reason we're not granted access to the Olympics.
yeah. It's odd. That
Yeah,
is odd. Yeah. There's
yeah.
definitely some stranger
It's
pursuits at the games than bowling.
yeah, and it is a bit heartbreaking when you see different sports getting in in the same trial period as bowling trying to get in, and they're saying, oh well, it's not really an interactive sport. And I'm like, you've obviously never stood in a bowling centre when a major tournament's happened or a PBA, because the atmosphere is unreal and you get drawn into every shot. And I'm kind of looking going, not interactive. You could say the same about skateboarding, you know, so why is that getting in and we're not getting in?
That's strange. All right. You mentioned there you had a natural aptitude and good hand-to-eye coordination. I presume hours and hours and hours and a misspent youth as well?
I think I've that natural ability anyway. I played so many sports, hockey, everything, so hand-eye is just a
Was
given.
there, yeah.
But with bowling, yeah, because I've been bowling since I was 6. There's a lot of muscle memory. There's a lot of like repetitive movements. There's like the accuracy is like the lane is 60 feet long. You're looking to hit 6/10 of an inch with your target. You're looking to repeat that. It's massive challenges, and there's massive physics, and there's massive muscle memory and repetitive form and strength and conditioning. And it's actually probably 90% mental, more than, I know it's very physical to watch, but it's a 90% mental game that bowling is, which I don't think people appreciate when you're going for a party and you're having alcohol. Like, you know, we've the same drug tests and everything that tennis or rugby or any of the other sports would have, because amazingly enough, marijuana is something that they used to use in the 60s for bowling to relax the muscles and take away the anxiety and stress before competition.
I'm sure.
And gets the swing going. So
yeah. And so it's interesting. The terminology is even slightly alien to me. So you do call it a swing. Is the technique fairly uniform? If I went to watch the World Cup event in Las Vegas, would I see all manner of different techniques? Some who bowl very fast, some who have lots of spin. Because I would associate a good bowler with having this nice bit of curl. It will start out, say, a right-hander to the right and suddenly spin back in and crash into the middle of all the bowls. Is that like, does everyone bowl that way, or is there no right way of doing it?
Everyone hopes to bowl that way. So it takes a lot of practice, and it takes a lot of breakdown of your game. So like there's a lot of, it's a lot of physics. So there's a lot of stuff to do with ball choice, what way your ball is drilled, what oil pattern is down on the lane, you know, how the ball is reading that, how are you reading it, and where you're moving your feet to, your target to. So there's a lot of physics breakdown in the mathematical aspect of it, and the reaction and the viscosity of the oil and all of this kind of stuff. But yes, like a lot of the bowlers, it's a 4 or 5 step approach. It's about the swing, getting back up and high, not too high, a controlled swing per se that allows your power or your energy to transfer from the arm and the ball down onto the lane, and to carry that energy from the ball to the pocket. Because you can throw a great ball, but if the energy isn't there at the end, you're not getting that hit in the pocket, and you're not getting the carry with the pins.
I presume when you're in a flow state, you must feel almost like completely at one with the ball and the wood, and just the slightest twitch of a finger or a movement, you know exactly how it's going to translate. I would say you get into those lovely states where it's all just the minutiae are very kind of tangible to you.
Yeah, it's that nice adrenaline curve peak zone where you don't even hear a pin drop. You're just in that lovely zone. You step up onto the lane, you know your footwork's good, you know your hand position is good, you know you're on the right ball choice, and you just get into this rhythm. And that's what it is. It's a rhythm where everything just flows, and it's nice, relaxed, comfortable. You're not having to try, and you know the minute you let that ball go, it's a strike. Or you know the minute you let that ball go, you've pulled it, and you're like, oh please, I've pulled it enough that it runs to the Brooklyn. So you do learn, and it's that feedback in the body that gives you that feedback, that allows you as a bowler to know the feeling that you have in from the shot. And then it's all that work you've done in practice, and it's knowing the lane breakdown, knowing your equipment, to know how you can move then. And it's about being ahead of the move. And this is something we all are still working on, everyone I bowl with, being ahead of the move so it doesn't catch you. if you're going for that 300 perfect game, all strikes, you have to be ahead of the move. You have to be watching the pins. You have to be watching the pinfall. You have to know how the ball is moving. You have to know how the oil's breaking down, where it's transitioning. And you have to know, right, I need to move. And I know I need to move 2 boards left of my feet. I need to move my arrow forward. I need to move a 2-1 move, 1 at the arrows, 2 at the feet, whatever it is. And it's about being sharp on that. And that's the bit COVID's actually kicked our arses with, because we've all become less sharp on our moves and less sharp on reading and trusting our bodies and trusting what we're doing. But yeah, there is that lovely zen when you get in and you're gone, and you can see it in bowlers when they're your friends and you know them, you know they're in their zone, you know they're gone, you know you're gonna have to work to get there. And it's about working to get there without overworking and chasing, because if you get into chasing with bowling and chasing scores or chasing someone's form or whatever it is, you're gone, because it's not about the other bowlers, it's about you in that lane. And so it's a very individual sport, but it's a very team sport, because if I'm in my zen and I'm bowling lovely and I'm with my doubles partner who I'm best friends with off the lane, I know how to talk to her and get her into her zone, and then we're both gone. And then it's good luck, God bless, you're not catching us.
And you know that you talk about the oil a few times, so I presume that affects things like how much spin the lane takes, all that kind of stuff.
You don't want to be spinning the ball. It's revs on the ball and rotation. Yeah.
Okay.
So there's a rotational axis point on the ball, and that the guys read off. But yeah, the oil. So you've different volumes of oil and you've different lengths. So example, you could have a 39 foot that we had the other weekend in Alsa, and it was a 5-to-1 ratio. So it was quite a heavy oil, but there was a massive snap at the end. So if you didn't get your read right in that oil, your ball was sailing off the lane to the left. So it's about knowing, like, and the patterns are released for competitions, and it's knowing how to read the patterns and to figure out how your equipment and your shot is going to line up with that. And it's about having more than one shot. Like, it's something I've been working on since I've come back after COVID and all the operations, is building. I used to have about 4 or 5 shots that I could throw, and I've come down to 2 at the minute, and I'm back up now of this week to about 4 of them, because I put the time in, and I linked in with my coach, who's amazing and has saved my ass. But it's things that you forget that you have in your arsenal in your head. But yeah, with the oil, it's down to volume, it's down to the length of it, it's down to who's on the lanes with you, how's their ball reading it, how are they transitioning the ball. So the oil moves down towards the head, the pin head, pin deck, as the lane goes on and transitions. So it's about knowing when is the time to then jump ball and change ball, because you have different ball cover stocks and you have different ball cores. So these all play part in how you play the oil as well.
Yeah. And you said there you've a few more shots now, or you lost some and you have some. So to bring in very easily grabbable comparisons, in golf, there's like a draw shot and a fade shot. And in football, footballers can slice a ball, or they can curl a ball right to left, or they can drill one, or they can have backspin on a ball. So is it similar comparisons, bowling?
Exact same. So I can throw a long ball. I can make my ball read early and roll early. You can push it out and get it to hook back. You can go straight up. There's guys that have massive revs, which is that rotational turn that you'll see on the ball. There's speed dominance, there's slow ball, there's all of this stuff that kind of, you've so many choices, and that's just one aspect. That's not playing the lane on 4 or 5 shots.
And what might dictate a shot selection? Mood?
No, dictating your shot selection is your oil pattern.
All right, okay, comes back to that.
Oil pattern is massive. It's the first thing you read. It's knowing what center you're in, what oil machine they're using, what oil they're using, and then from that, you know, because there's different setups of lanes to do with, like, there used to be wood in Ireland, it's gone. Palmerston was wood, and then there's synthetic, which is all the leisure plexus, and they react differently to oil. So you can have the same oil pattern in 3 centers, but it'll play differently in each center. So it's knowing that, like, I have a diary where I write everything down, because all the best will intention, you're not going to retain all that information. But it's about figuring what the oil pattern is. And from that, then it's figuring what ball. And then from that, doing your reader ball and figuring off that, do I need to push this longer? Do I need to change that my ball is going to roll earlier? Do I need to push it out to board 6 and let it come back in, which is that big hook that you talk
Yes.
about. A hockey stick is what we call it. Do I want a hockey stick it? Do I want to banana roll it? Do I want to early roll? Do I want it to, you know, go long and kick in? These are all things that when you have your 5-10 minute practice, you're figuring out with your gear, and it's coming off a reader ball. So every bowler technically should, I do anyway, and I know a lot of the guys that I bowl with do. We have a reader shot, so we have a reader ball. So doesn't matter what pattern, you don't need to tell me, because sometimes we don't get told what pattern's down. I can pick up my reader ball, I can throw it on my safe line that I know how to read off of, and from that then I do my maths and I work out what ball I need to be on, where I need to be standing,
interesting.
what power, what speed, all of that.
Okay, God, that's amazingly interesting. A reader ball, yeah. This is akin to like a cameraman getting someone to hold up something white in front of the camera, so he's got a baseline to work
your
off.
favorite ball that you know how to manipulate.
Yes.
And how you trust. So it's all about trust. If you trust the ball, you trust your shot. If you trust your shot, you're doing a clean shot that you can read off of. If you don't trust your shot, you can't read off it. You can't move off the shot. You can't read.
See, I knew at my 16th birthday at Leisureplex, the oil didn't suit me. I was saying it. This is not the oil where I play my best stuff. So one of the other reasons we wanted to speak to you is it's Endometriosis Awareness Month. And like I mentioned, you had an amazing interview with Arthur O'D on the Off the Ball website last year. Endometriosis is, I mean, in so much as I've read about it, seems to be a diagnosis where you can have no symptoms or you can have the most chronic, unbearable symptoms, and probably everything in between. And your story, you seem to have, you experienced both, really, in that it was only in your late 20s when symptoms started, but when they started, they really started.
Yeah. So obviously normal, well, actually not normal periods, but we women don't talk about it. It's a period and we don't go into the details of it. So it was only up into my late 20s, I literally started passing out from the pain, vomiting, you name it, from the pain, my body just trying to get rid of everything out of that space so that I could swell up with the period. And from that, ending up in hospital in Scotland, where they did tests and they found that at the time I had they didn't stage it, but they basically diagnosed the endometriosis, but they also found cervical cancer at the time. So I ended up coming back to Ireland. And when I came back to Ireland, I came back with my papers from Scotland, as you do when they discharge you with something like that. And they handed me over to my parents, even though I was in my 20s, because I was a medical risk in their eyes, which I didn't understand at the time. And I went for an operation with a surgeon who was leading out on endo in Ireland, and I was within her first 3 months of doing the laparoscopic procedure in Ireland. And I woke up from that operation and I couldn't physically stand up straight. The pain had only gotten worse, and the bleeding hadn't stopped. And I went for a second opinion because my father believed me. He knew me. I have a very high pain threshold. I've competed in competitions with blood pumping out my hand. I've competed in competitions with a grade 3 tear in my quad, and I've continued to the end and then dropped. So he knew when I was talking pain, it was pain. And I had the second operation it was under 4 months. And they recommend you don't do laparoscopic procedure, should only be a max, and this is on emergency, it should only be 6 months. It shouldn't come under a 6 month gap between two surgeries at that level. And when he went in, the surgeon found that not only had the procedure not been done correctly, they had used an ablation, which is burning of endo, which pushes it deeper into the abdominal area. They'd also left endo and they had left cancer cells. So that operation saved my life. At the time, they told my parents, they didn't tell me, that I would have had under 6 months to live if that hadn't been rectified through that surgery. From that, then I kind of went off and I ended up back in, had another surgery a year later. From that, then I got referred to a specialist and he diagnosed me with cervical stenosis and endo stage 4. He then sent me off to his team that he was handing over to. They did another, I don't know how many surgeries. They then tried to offer me fertility treatment in a way to quieten down my endo, which with all research would tell you that doesn't work. And at that stage, I'd started to kind of get a bit of autonomy for myself. I was starting to get annoyed with people trying to tell me how I was feeling or not feeling in my body, trying to tell me to just take more medication. There was all of this kind of like, I don't know, I get where the endo warrior comes from, because you hit this wall where you're just like, enough's enough, you're not listening. You know, I'm doing my own research, I'm finding this online. Can you explain this or talk me through this? And they weren't able to have that conversation. And what was even more scary is I'm coming from a medical background. So I'm looking at these people going, come on, you know, we speak the same language. Why can't you have this conversation? And then it got to the point where they were treating me with Deep-Avera, which is basically shutting my system into menopause. And I had this massive brain fog. I was in the car trying to drive to my best friend's house, which I've driven to since I've been going to her house since I was 12, and I had to ask her to give me directions to her mum's house. And I went, this is ridiculous. This is insane. This is destroying my life. I'd had to step out of college numerous times because of operations, and not being well enough to do the level that you do for a level 8 or a level 9 in ECD. So it took me longer for that. And then I just hit a wall and was having a conversation with my friend. Her sister works in Tala Hospital, and she said, have you not heard of this amazing, you know, surgeon woman? And I went off and did my own little bit of research, as I normally did, and I came back and I was like, can you get me in? Can you get me an appointment? And I sat with her and she went through my history. It was only when I sat with her and went through my history, I suddenly realized at that stage, I think I had 7 operations and I still wasn't right. And I was kind of running out of space for keyhole on my tummy, and how many times can you cut through my belly button? And you know, how many times do I have to step out of a European Championships or a World Championships or a World Cup or a European singles because of endometriosis? And I was getting really, really annoyed. And then she sent me on this journey of proper fundamental research that she used. So she had that medical conversation with me as a peer saying, have you read this research? What research did you read? And we had that lovely flow of, well, this is what I was looking. Did you see this in Australia? Did you see this in New Zealand? There's this new information coming in. Have you heard of Kathleen King? She is the head of Endometriosis Association of Ireland. She's a massive powerhouse and voice for us. Would you be willing to, you know, speak and talk at the conference? You're a physio background, you've had these operations. And at the time I was like, whoa, I'm not ready for this. Like I'm still trying to swim through my own storm, but come back to me. So then I had the operation, the 8th operation with her, the January, and she did that in the Coombe, and she came back up to me when I woke up, and she had her laptop with her. And when I saw the laptop, I knew. I was like, here we go. Sorry. And she showed me. Yeah.
No, Aoife, take your time. It's very personal and it's very difficult.
She showed me my scans and she went through everything with me, and she gave that respect that I knew what I was looking at because I have that training. And she had the conversation with me, basically explaining she didn't understand why they had offered fertility treatment. She didn't understand why they did so many operations and the damage that they caused. Because at the time I had damage on one of my nerves from, I couldn't feel anything on the right hand side of my tummy from one of the operations. And she kind of justified to me that I wasn't going insane. And she just said, we need to take it out, and we need to take it out to save you. And I know you want babies, but it's quality of life and life over that. And, you know, she let me go off and she let me think. And then she was looking at doing the operation in March, but her findings from the operation, like we'd booked in the operation for the hysterectomy in the March. And from that January up, she then also was like, it's not just your womb, it's in your fallopian tubes. When your ovaries is destroyed, it's into your bowel, it's on your bladder, it's on your anterior pelvic wall. It's, you know, we're kind of having to look, is it gone elsewhere? Has it gone to your liver? Has it gone to your diaphragm? You know, is it starting to progress and up anywhere else in the body? So I had to go get another MRI. I've had so many MRIs and X-rays, it's insane. I always say, if they know you in the hospital, you're in trouble. Like the guys in the Beacon knew me for bloods and X-ray and MRI to the point that they'd be like, hello, Aoife. And they were showing me pictures of their dogs. But that operation kind of changed my life in the sense that it took me though till the December from the January to get in for the op, because for some reason endometriosis surgery in Ireland is seen as elective for women, which absolutely baffles me. If somebody is in pain and it's destroying their organs, how is that elective to have that surgery? How is it elective to have a laparoscopic procedure to diagnose, and then from that point is the gold standard for treatment of endo? So how is that elective? You know, I had to wait till the December because she had to ask another surgeon, a bowel specialist and a general surgeon to come in on my surgery. It took till the December 2019 for that to be sorted, and they had to pull me into Tala Hospital because it was the only place suitable between equipment and the specialists that could do the operation. And I woke up after the operation. I was down for, I don't know, 6-8 hours. I was marked up for stoma bag right and left at the time. I'd been in with the stoma team. I'd met the stoma care nurse. I'd met the oncology team. I'd met the just everybody and anyone. And she was brilliant that way because she was proper multidisciplinary in her approach. And I went down for the surgery. Kind of at that point, I was physically wiped out. I'd been bleeding for 1.5 years. All treatment medication wise had stopped working. I wasn't able to take any of the hormone replacement stuff. My body has just decided it was done with it. I'd weaned myself off all the medication I'd been on, because at one stage I was on morphine, I was on Targan, I was on amitriptyline, all in one day with Solpadol thrown in for good measure. And through, amazing enough, through acupuncture and different things, I figured how to get off them. But that was back in 2017. But waking up from that operation was the first time that I'll never forget, kind of waking up and just dropping my hands down to check had I got a stoma bag, and I didn't. And I was kind of like, okay, now I can go back to sleep. And I remember, like, obviously my now husband and my mum that were absolutely petrified, because they've been told I had a 50-50 chance of waking up from the op because it was that complicated. And remember waking up and just thinking, I don't have any pain. I don't have that endo pain. There's pain and then there's endo pain. And endo pain is, it starts small and then it grows, and it kind of comes from your toes or the center of your belly button, and it just takes over the whole body. But that little niggling ache that was always in the background was gone. And it was like, I kind of found myself doing this top to bottom check, you know, like you normally do for a physio check. And I was like, no, I can't feel it. And it was that normal surgery recovery pain. And I was like, I can handle that because I know medication will work on this pain. I know this pain will dissolve and disappear within 6 weeks.
Yeah.
And I know there's an end in sight to this pain. You know?
It all sounds just harrowing, I have to say. In those years where you were dealing with symptoms, and I know, for instance, at that World Cup in Las Vegas, your father had to fly out to try and help you. And the painkillers you were on certainly weren't allowed during competition because of anti-doping regulations. For you, were you in pain like constantly all month, every month, or was it just around periods, or did it vary, or did it change over the years?
It changed, it evolved. So it started that it was only around the period. So it would be that 3-4 day lead up to the period. You'd start feeling it, and then it would kick in and it would take you out. It would take your feet from under you. And then it would take a week after for that to go. So you'd really only be getting a week or so without it. But towards the end and towards that last operation, it was pain every day. It was pain waking you at night. You couldn't sleep. It was that whole thing of, if you went to work, you came home and you went for sleep because your body just couldn't handle it. It was that whole exhaustion, emotional drain kind of, and also that mental health bits. And we still haven't fixed that. Like, there is no follow-up for, psychology or grievance counseling or anything following a hysterectomy for endometriosis. I'm lucky that I have a family that are great with all this stuff, and there's training in our family for that. But there's others that aren't as fortunate as me. There's others that don't have that. We like there. It's that whole that pain, that endo pain. It just overwhelms you, and it's that fear of, this is really serious for me and no one's listening.
Yeah.
And if no one's listening, how can I get help? And it comes back to that whole thing that was in the story, that woman, Laura Newell. She was in that cycle where she was in massive pain. She was trying to get help. She ended up on the pain meds that every single one of us endo warriors is on at some stage. And it's not an addiction because they come from a specialist prescribing them. And it's over the counter, that's controlled. It's that waiting for somebody to do a laparoscope and go, it's endo, and this is the path we have to do to treat it. And the surgery that she underwent is the exact same surgery I underwent. The only difference is I survived and she didn't. It's that whole, it's a pain thing, but it's also a mental stress thing that comes with endo because you're not being helped, you're not being listened. And how do you get somebody to listen to you if a medical professional is sitting in front of you and you're telling them everything, and you've kept your diary and you're showing the pattern, you're showing the repeat, you're showing, this is the research I've been looking into, and this is whatever, what do you think? And they sit there and they don't know because they haven't been upskilled in it. Like, where do you go from that? Most people give up.
And do you feel in this country we're behind other countries?
Massively behind. We are massively behind. Like, it's a 9-year waiting list to be diagnosed with endometriosis in Ireland. It's 9 years from the minute you present in a GP saying there's something wrong with my period, I have excessive pain, or I'm bleeding excessively. It's 9 years to diagnosis of endometriosis.
And is that through the public health care? Like, if you can,
doesn't
if
matter.
you're doesn't
Just
matter.
Give and take about 6 months or a year. Doesn't matter. It's all to do with who you sit in front of.
So you could be very lucky, or you could be very, very unlucky.
Yes. And you can be very lucky that you've somebody in your family that knows what endometriosis is and has the voice for you.
Yeah.
Or it can be that nowadays, which I think is amazing, there's pros and cons to Facebook and all of that. But the pro of Facebook is there's all these groups now that are endometriosis awareness groups. New Zealand, Australia, they're gone miles ahead of us. They're miles ahead of us in all our physio bits, so it doesn't surprise me they're miles ahead of us in women's health and all of that. The UK are miles ahead of us, which shouldn't be the case. They have multiple designated centres just for endometriosis diagnosis and treatment. Ireland have just this, in 2021, I think it was, dedicated that the Coombe will have that set up. Now, the specialist that I was seeing in Tala has that running already, but it's not getting the recognition. So it's down to, I don't know, what do you do? Like, as I said, Endometriosis Association of Ireland has Kathleen King singing, screaming, and being a great advocate for us. But if the powers that be that can help don't listen, where do we go? What do we stand? Like, there's women in Ireland going to Bucharest to a specialist over there that links in for surgeries that they would be waiting for in Ireland. I was deemed a P1 or the highest risk for waiting for my surgery, and I still had to wait from the January to the December. I don't like to think of what would have happened if I didn't have that advocacy from the specialists I was dealing with, like where I'd be, or you know. It's just, it's women's health in Ireland. It's not given enough funding. There's not enough female gynaes in it. There's a lot of men, and with all respect due, unless you have had a period and you know that pain, and then someone comes along and explains it worse pain than that, you know, it's not for lack of empathy, but it's that whole, if a woman comes to you and reports that her period has changed and the pain is excruciating, they rule out cancer and then they stop. It's like, well, what about endo? Endo can affect every single organ and tissue in the body, and it destroys the tissue that it gets into. You know, it's a dysfunctional disease that just, it can involve the whole endocrine system. It's now being found in lung tissue, in the diaphragm, in liver, in gallbladder, you know, spleen. If you look into the ISHA, or like the new guidelines for endo, they're now, you know, showing all of this information. And yeah, it's just, it's hard to watch the girls coming behind me that are younger. I pray that by doing this interview and talking about it, that it might light something in one girl to go further and ask for further help, or it might show one girl that, do you know what, I went through hell with endo, but I didn't lose my sport, because my sport helped me stay me. It helped me stay focused. It helped me see where I was physically and mentally, and it gave me that check-in that you need with endo, that, you know, do you know what, today is not a good day, or do you know what, this is actually a good week, so let's do everything I want to do. Yeah,
God, that's awful. You know, I'm so sorry to hear about your experience. It's just awful.
I'm okay now. I've had time, and I'm blessed with family. I have 3 aunts of mine, my mum's sisters, who are great role models. They never had children, be it for whatever reason, endo or whatever, like, and they've shown me that life isn't, as much as you'd love to have children, but life doesn't end just because you don't have children.
Oh, of course,
they have had powerful careers. They go skiing, they have a house in Mallorca, and you know, they have these amazing lives where they travel, and they all have 3 dogs and a cat, and you know, their life is full, and they have me. And they've shown me that, you know, okay, I mightn't have a child, but I'll be driving my Mercedes that only has 2 seats, so it's okay. You know, it's getting that balance.
Yeah,
you know?
and but I'm sure there's a period of coming to terms with it as well. But it's funny, this conversation arose, and Arthur suggested it, our producer, recently, because just a friend of mine had been going through IVF for the last number of years, you know, at great financial cost, emotional cost, a huge toll on the couple. And they have only discovered really in the last number of months that actually a simple scan to identify endo wasn't done. And therefore the last number of years have been a waste of time, and they never stood a chance effectively. And so it's only laterally that problem's been dealt with. And now hopefully they're on the road, but we're talking, you know, years, and you can imagine the upset, you can imagine the anger, the frustration that it's caused them. So, I mean, they're my limited kind of experiences, and listening to you, it sounds like we need to have a lot of conversations, big, very serious, urgent conversations about this. Is it being discussed more than it was, I don't know, a decade ago?
Yes.
Yeah.
I think it is. I think there's awareness for it now. There's a lot more research as well being done for it, where beforehand there wasn't. That specialist that works at Atala and Coombe, she's unreal. She is forging ahead. She goes away, if not twice a year, if not more. She upskills, she gets more training to do with it. She's massive in the background with all of them endo groups. You know, she's that kind of beacon of hope and strength. And she's rallying people around that have that fire too. Like, I've come back in with her and I've given talks to patients coming behind me now. And at the start, when she said it, I was like, I'm not there. Like, I'm too, you know, where now I'm there with her, and I get it. And she even has me thinking about changing from pediatric physio to pelvic physio and endo especially. But yeah, there is, and I hope that I'm one of them that kind of has the voice. Like, at the time when you're in the middle of the storm, you don't realize it's taking everything of you to get through that storm. But when you come out the other side, you can be that light for somebody that's still in the middle of it. And in talking about it, in being that person people could come and ask about it, I think that is being the light. And I think for women, I think it takes women empowering women to help us, to save us, and to get us through. It also takes people like my brother. He's great. Like, he'd fight through hell and high water for me, and he's another one that, you know, he's comfortable in them conversations because he's gotten comfortable with me. And if he hears something, he'll go, Aoife, what do you think of this? Do you need to get in contact and have that conversation? My father, the same. Aoife, would you mind having this conversation with this person? They're going through this. You know, we were having this chat, and maybe it'd be easier for you to have that conversation because you know, and, you know, direct them and what do they need to be doing. So them conversations are happening around me because I'm quite open with it now. And that's not saying, like, today I was only on to my gynae team, and they're looking for my gastro team to link back in. I'm still waiting 2 years on for my gastro team to link in after my operation in 2019. So that'll tell you the health system for women. So, like, I'm still, like, they're investigating if if my liver is affected, and I'm due a liver biopsy. But I think having these conversations, and even to do with women having hysterectomies, regardless of endometriosis, it's happening younger for women. I think it's having that safe space to have that conversation. I think it's having that safe space within a sport as well, that, you know, the younger girls will hopefully stay on bowling because, you know, they know that they can have these conversations. They know that there's somebody there that can direct them through or help them through if it's to do with the awkwardness of being a teenage girl and getting your period in a sport. Like, there's others doing it, like Danielle Collins is a tennis player, and she's a massive endo warrior, and she's on a bigger platform than I could ever be on at the minute, and she's talking about it. So I think the more our sportswomen talk about it, if they have it, the more it's going to reach people that need to hear it. And the more it's going to help the girls come behind us. Because I think at the end of the day, yes, I can't have babies. Yes, I would have loved to have kids. But if I can save one girl from not having that same story as me, well, then that's my mission complete. Because I wouldn't wish it on anyone. Like, there's days that you do have moments like this. I don't have this in-depth conversation about it all the time.
Sure.
But when I do, it still hits me.
Yeah, I'm sure. Yeah.
Because I don't think you can talk about it and if what maybes, but to survive, you can't stay stuck in it, because if you stay stuck in it, you've lost the rest of your life. And I'm more of a happy-go-lucky person. I like to see people happy. I like to help people anyway.
But
I'm that sucker.
you would be entitled to be both angry and sad about this every day if you let yourself.
Yeah, but I think then you lose. I think you either have to be a victim or survivor with endometriosis, but like everything. So if I'm a victim to endometriosis, I don't go to work. I sit on my sofa. I feel sorry for myself. If I'm a warrior survivor, yes, I have days that I have to give in, but on the other days, I'm gone and I'm living it up, and I'm going to work, and I'm going bowling, and I'm training, and I'm doing what I want to do. And it's getting that balance when you're in the middle of it, because I know when I was in the middle of it, it was really hard sometimes.
Yeah.
But I also know when I was in the middle of it, I felt better if I went for that walk, or if I just went up to the bowl, if I did that physical bit, my body thanked me for it. So if you give in fully, you're giving it too much room. Where if you kind of come at it, be it through diet or sport or fitness or whatever it is that you do, I think you're going to win at it. You know?
Well, listen, thank you so much for coming on and talking so honestly, Aoife, and we wish you well in life with the bowling certainly as well,
Thank
and
you.
hopefully raising awareness for Endometriosis Month as well. So thank you so much for coming on, and well, yeah, we wish you well. Thanks a million.
Cheers. Thank you for having me, and thanks for letting me talk about bowling and helping the girls out there.